Bob Ferguson refused to speak up when it mattered most. Bob Ferguson, for the last decade, has been one of the most prominent Democrats in the state of Washington, one of the most influential voices in the Democratic Party. And he has sat his happy ass back and he has listened to his party push police defunding, vilify law enforcement, completely ignore left-wing rioters, disorder, and anarchy. He has watched lawmakers in Olympia of his own political party push pro-criminal, anti-public safety policies and not said a damn word about them. And now he wants a promotion. He wants to be governor because he's dreamed a dream of it for so long. And he wants us to suddenly forget that he hasn't had anything to say about these issues for the last decade plus. And I simply refuse to not do everything in my power to try to wake people up to that fact. You know, and there's this fine line between, am I really going to put a direct tie between Bob Ferguson and Ruth Dalton being murdered and her dog being stabbed to death? And people will say, that's not fair to politicize it in that way. You know what? I don't care. It is fair. He's earned it. And many, many other politicians who have failed to speak up when it mattered most in a way that would have prevented Seattle and public safety in Seattle from deteriorating to this extent. The thing is that we don't have to be in this place. We weren't in this place 15 years ago. Was there crime? Of course. There's always crime when you're in a major city. But what we're seeing here are violent attacks, random attacks, fueled by a failed mental health system, and a failed mental health system that's fueled by a drug crisis that progressives in the party of power have made exceedingly worse over the last decade. So I genuinely don't care if it's considered like politicizing something. It's just the truth. It is the truth. People like Jay Inslee, people like Bob Ferguson, many, many, many of the elected leaders that we've had in and out of Seattle City Hall for the past 15 years, many, many of the elected leaders that we've had, particularly in the last 5 years in Olympia as the State House and State Senate have gone further to the left, as they've pushed pro-criminal, soft-on-crime policies. Yeah, they do have blood on their hands. They are to blame for this. You know, think of how many people were hurt. I think of little Immaculée Golde, who was struck and killed by a guy driving a stolen landscaping truck, left for dead in a ditch. I mean, that never would have happened if not for the soft-on-crime policies that were pushed in Olympia. So you can call it politicization. I call it the truth. And I call it holding people accountable for the horrible consequences of their actions. I checked Bob Ferguson's campaign account. Surely, I thought he said something about this. 2 days since Ruth was murdered, a day since we found out that she was murdered by an 8-time felon. I thought surely Bob's talking about this on his campaign social media. No, you know what he's talking about? He's talking about suing people, the thing he loves the most. And then he's talking about how scary Dave Reichert is because Dave Reichert's anti-choice. Oh, he'll strip abortion care and health care. He's anti-choice. Literally, that's what Bob Ferguson is tweeting about. Trying to make Dave Reichert sound scary because Dave Reichert will allegedly do something he couldn't even do as governor. So completely baseless, factless fear-mongering. Meanwhile, the actual scary thing that's happening in our communities that he contributed to, he has jack shit to say about it. And of course not. And I thought he was the public safety candidate. Weren't his first political ads on TV about how he's going to turn public safety around, despite the fact he was the state's chief law enforcer for the last 12 years and public safety has gotten significantly worse under his watch? But he came out with the TV ads and he all of a sudden wanted to be the public safety candidate. Where's the public safety candidate today? And you might say again, like, well, what did he do specifically that contributed to this 8-time felon going in and out of prison and killing Ruth Dalton? It's what he didn't do. It's what he hasn't said. Bob Ferguson, and I hate to make this the Bob freaking Ferguson show, but I have to underscore, and these, I know the people watching this show know this, but we'll push out clips. I want them shared far and wide with people who don't know this, who are only seeing what he says, who don't dig for the truth themselves because they've got other things to do. Bob Ferguson refused to speak up when it mattered most. Bob Ferguson, for the last decade, has been one of the most prominent Democrats in the state of Washington, one of the most influential voices in the Democratic Party. And he has sat his happy ass back and he has listened to his party push police defunding, vilify law enforcement, completely ignore left-wing rioters, disorder, and anarchy. He has watched lawmakers in Olympia of his own political party push pro-criminal, anti-public safety policies and not said a damn word about them. And now he wants a promotion. He wants to be governor because he's dreamed a dream of it for so long. And he wants us to suddenly forget that he hasn't had anything to say about these issues for the last decade plus. And I simply refuse to not do everything in my power to try to wake people up to that fact. I'll tell you what, had Bob Ferguson, had Jay Inslee, had they come out in 2020 during the police defunding debate and had Bob Ferguson stepped forth as the Attorney General and had just another one of the many, many press conferences he loves to do and said, hey, I am all for, a more equitable system, but we cannot defund the police. We can't do that. I'm all for holding them accountable when they do something wrong, but we can't defund the police. We can't leave our communities with no one to respond when they have a life or death emergency and call 911. We can't outright vilify the police and just blanket vilify them because what's going to happen? They're going to leave. They're not going to want to work here. He could have said that. He didn't say that. When the legislature went and passed these in the 2021 legislative session, these restrictions on police tactics, including police pursuits, making it almost impossible for police to be able to pursue a violent suspect who would very likely go on to harm the community. Bob Ferguson didn't say anything about that. He didn't say anything about it in 2021. He didn't say anything about it in 2022. He didn't say anything about it in 2023. He only said something about it in 2024 after it was clear that the legislature was poised to adopt a citizen initiative, rolling that law back. And all of a sudden, he's doing an interview with King 5 or Como News or whatever it was, and he's like, oh, I didn't support the rollback of police pursuits in 2021, and I support the initiative that's fixing them. Get a grip. How dishonest is that?